President Trump is in Vietnam today for his second summit with Kim Jong Un. The president arrived Tuesday night local time. He will be meeting with the North Korean dictator Wednesday for dinner. The official summit is set to take place Thursday, but Hanoi has already seen a flurry of activity. CBS News foreign correspondent Ben Tracy is there with more.
When the North Korean leader arrived in Vietnam, he was wearing a black suit and a big smile. Kim Jong Un seemed relieved to be done with his 60-hour train ride from Pyongyang. Once inside his armored Mercedes, he even rolled down the window. The dictator, known for starving and killing his own people, looked like a seasoned politician. When he arrived at his hotel in Hanoi, North Korean security agents left nothing to chance. A bellman tells CBS News that all of Kim Jong Un's food, cooking supplies, and even forks and knives were brought in from North Korea. But what he's willing to do without is the question of this summit. Will North Korea take any concrete steps towards denuclearization? Before leaving Washington, President Trump previewed the argument he'll make to Kim.
We want denuclearization, and I think he'll have a country that will set a lot of records for speed in terms of an economy.
Kim Jong Un desperately wants relief from crippling economic sanctions, but he doesn't yet seem willing to trade his nuclear weapons to get it, even if it would improve the lives of his impoverished people.
But I think North Korea also needs to understand that they can't eat nuclear weapons.
Chun In-bum is a former lieutenant general of the South Korean Army.
Do you really believe North Korea, after all this time and all this money, is actually going to give these weapons up?
I personally think that it's going to be a hard process. But even if they decide to do so, it's going to take 15, 20 years.
And joining me now with more is Politico White House correspondent Anita Kumar. Welcome, Anita. Is there anything on the table this go-round that wasn't on the table at the first summit that could bring North Korea closer to denuclearization?
The White House really talked about the first meeting, the first summit in Singapore, as sort of getting to know each other, putting out those, feelers out there for what they could do. I mean, this second time around, the pressure is on both of them, particularly President Trump, to sort of have some deliverable, right? This is the second meeting. If he comes back with no concrete steps, that would be a problem. So they have not talked about specific things that they want to do. There's been some reporting leaking out there of things that they would like for example, obviously inspections, which critics have said, well, we can't really see what they're doing and not doing. We need to get in there and really know what's going on. Shutting down facilities, that sort of thing. So that's the things that they would be looking at, and the White House would be prepared to offer things like perhaps not having removing sanctions and things like that. But it's really going to just depend here on what the feel is like if both countries really want to come up with a deal.
But Anita, isn't the president going to look like he's outmaneuvered if he offers a reduction in sanctions for anything less than denuclearization? Yeah, but the problem is denuclearization is such a vague thing, right? So North Korea can say, well, we're doing it. It's the question of how the United States is checking on that. I remember covering when the Iran nuclear deal was happening, and there was all sorts of talk about how are we going to be able to tell that they are no longer doing the things, producing these weapons, producing different things. And so that's really going to be the detail. You can expect that the White House is going to say, hey, we have a win. It's the question of how they will be able to check and inspect what's going on in North Korea over the coming months and years. Right. And Anita, meanwhile, here in the U.S., Democrats are moving to block the president's emergency declaration to build his wall. How is the White House pushing back on those efforts? Well, the president had said a while back that he would veto any attempt to block it. So we already know that he plans to do that. I think there is some, of course, disappointment that Republicans would be voting this way. Obviously, he expected the Democrats to do this. So the House is voting today, and then the Senate will take it up at some point. But we've already seen that some Republicans, a handful, and that's all it takes, are going to side with Democrats in the Senate. So there is some disappointment there, but again, they did expect that some Republicans would not go their way. And, I want to point out that Republican Senator Tillis wrote an op-ed in the Washington Post titled, "I support Trump's vision on border security, but I would vote against the emergency." In it, he writes, "There is no intellectual honesty in now turning around and arguing that there's an imaginary asterisk attached to executive overreach, that it's acceptable for my party, but not their party." So do you think other Republicans agree with this argument that you can't attack President Obama's overreach at the same time as you support President Trump's? And what does it mean for the president?
Yeah, my colleagues did a very interesting story yesterday where they talked to about a dozen Republican senators about what they were going to do when this comes to the Senate. Now, most of them would not say either way, but many of them were very critical of President Trump for going on this road. So they are unhappy about it, but they wouldn't say that they were voting against it. But yes, these were people that did criticize President Obama, and so they are worried about being hypocritical now. And House Speaker Nancy Pelosi is sort of looking at that as well. She's saying, look, this isn't a border issue. Obviously, it's about the border, but it's not a border issue. It's a constitutional issue. Should the President of the United States be going this route? So she clearly is seeing what the feeling out there is among Republicans and sort of using that.
And Anita, you also have a recent article out that says Republican donors are starting to get worried that President Trump's campaign may lack strategy to win in 2020. What are they saying?
Sure, we talked to about a dozen people and heard that a lot of these donors, these are longtime Republican donors, not necessarily Trump supporters, but people that have, in the past might have supported George W. Bush or Mitt Romney or John McCain when they were running for president, that they're worried that President Trump doesn't have a strategy to win back some of the states that Republicans lost in the midterms. So, President Trump won in 2016. He surprised so many people by winning. That's because he won over states like Wisconsin and Pennsylvania and Michigan. And it's some of those same states in the midterms in November that Republican lost key races. So there's a lot of worry about those particular states. And like many things with President Trump, there's also some worry that even if there was a strategy or a message, that he would step on his own message, that he wouldn't follow that strategy because he's so unpredictable. So they are worried, and they're asking a lot of questions of the campaign.
So is there also a worry that perhaps this time around just rallying the base, which is something that the president has been so focused on, won't be enough?
Yes, definitely. I mean, the president needs to win over moderates and centrists and people in the suburbs and college-educated women, all these different groups that we've been hearing about. But if you'll remember what he did in November, he mostly went to states and had these huge enthusiastic Make America Great Again rallies in states that he won in 2016, places where they already supported him, and didn't really reach out into some of those other areas and didn't really talk about some of the issues that might appeal to some people. Now, a lot of Republicans and people that support President Trump said that the issues are appealing to other people. And so, we don't, obviously, it's hard to tell 2 years out exactly what's going to happen, but there are donors asking questions and saying, what is the strategy? Why don't you tell us what your plan is before we sort of make decisions on exactly how we're going to proceed and whether we should give money. And so if they don't have the details, then it's hard to sort of make that decision.
All right, Anita Kumar, thank you so much for your time.
Sure. Thank you.